The 2023 Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro. If you have a long memory or if you are a longtime viewer of this channel, you remember that the Tacoma was the first video I ever did by myself. And let me tell you, it did not go according to plan. So to make amends for that, we're going to revisit the Tacoma. This truck is sadly about to be replaced with something with 4 cylinders and a turbocharger. So I thought it was a good time to walk you through what made this truck great, go through some of its compromises, take you to the shop where we're going to break down the various trim levels and the mechanical differences, then take this thing for a quick drive on the street. So with that, enjoy the video. Inside the Toyota Tacoma, as you're going to hear a lot about this truck, your enjoyment is going to be based upon your perspective. If you are prioritizing a pure utility vehicle, essentially a tool, you may like this truck quite a bit. But when it comes to flexibility of the interior space and the configuration of the vehicle, it is somewhat limited. You get 2 different cab configurations, either an access cab or a double cab, and 2 different bed configurations, either a 5-foot or 6-foot bed. If you get this TRD Pro, you can only get it one way, double cab with a 5-foot bed. The interior space is, however, the biggest compromise. If you are a taller driver with longer legs, you may find your comfort in this vehicle somewhat limited, specifically in seating position. The seat is a little bit too low for most drivers, which means your knees are bent at an awkward angle. And when it comes to headroom, if you are much above 6 foot tall, your head will definitely brush against this headliner. The rear seats, while there is some seating configurability with the seats being able to be folded down, you don't have a lot of legroom back there. You don't have a lot of headroom. Same with the door storage. It is somewhat limited compared to some of the more modern vehicles, something like a Ford Maverick or an F-150. The interior technology, though, is exactly what someone probably should expect in a pickup truck like this. It is exactly what you need and not a whole lot more. The truck now at higher trim levels has lane keep assist and adaptive cruise control. It also has Apple CarPlay, which are all pros. The rest of the interior controls, however, are all legacy, which means you have physical HVAC controls. All of your 4-wheel drive off-road modes are controlled by physical switches, and your gauge cluster is not a LCD display or a giant one. It has 2 analog gauges with a very small LCD instrument cluster, which gives you things like your off-road controls, what MTS mode you're in, your fuel economy, all the basic bits. Again, this truck is not going to be for everyone, but if you value what it has to offer, specifically its utilitarian approach and its long-term durability, you'll probably enjoy this space. But with that, let's head into the shop and put this thing up on the lift. All right, Mark, we're underneath the Toyota Tacoma. This is a 2023. We were supposed to get one of these products last year, and a illustrious journalist, if you remember the story, drove it into a lake and waterlogged it because he thought the air snorkel was a water snorkel. So finally, we're getting to do the Tacoma video we always wanted.
Let me ask you before you get started, because Jack's going to break down everything, and I'm just going to sit here like a basically stone statue. I don't understand this particularly. I mean, I get it because it's a Toyota and it lasts forever and all that, but just looking at it and understanding it, why does this have such a following? It looks archaic. It looks like, you know, in about 5 years it's going to be rotted out in the salt. So what's the deal?
I think this truck, like many of the legacy Toyota products, becomes a matter of what you value. This is basically like a tool. It's an appliance that you know is not the fanciest thing in the world, may not be the best tool, but you know it'll last and not cost you any money. Personally, I think one of the things that has saved the Tacoma for so long is all of the other mid-size trucks, the Ranger, the Colorado, the Nissan equivalent of this, the Frontier, were all so bad or uninspiring that the Tacoma's reliability was what propelled it for so long. From a truck perspective, this thing's built in Mexico. It's not built in Japan, at least here in the US. It's not built in the United States. It's a body-on-frame truck. It's independent suspension front. It is a leaf spring liver axle rear. There are various lengths of this vehicle. You can get this as they call it an access cab, so it's like an extended 2-door. You can get this as a 5 or 6 foot bed, or you can get this as the double cab, which we are under. This can be had as a 4-cylinder. The SR trim, the base trim levels, come as a larger displacement 4-cylinder. That can be had as rear-wheel drive. It can have either a 6-speed or automatic or a 6-speed manual gearbox. Then you can move up to the 4-wheel drive setups of these trucks. They can be had as a V6, basically. As soon as you get out of the SR and you move your way up, they're all the 6 cylinders. The ubiquitous 3.5 liter. It can either be mated to a 6-speed automatic. This automatic now is finally reliable in this generation of truck. It does gear hunt a lot, as we're going to talk about in the drive segment. And then you can get a 6-speed manual gearbox. It's cable actuated. It's not the best feeling gearbox in the world, but it does avoid some of the hunting found with it.
Do people buy it? Is it really popular? They probably are sold out of them everywhere.
Pretty much. Suspension, you get a variety of different setups. The TRD Sport is the first one where the spring rates sort of change. It's the same stock damper. When you go to the TRD Off-Road, which is sort of that middle ground truck, you get the Bilstein dampers. You get their crawl control and their terrain select function, which uses the brakes in conjunction with the 4-wheel drive system to help you get over some stuff. It has hill descent control. And then you have this TRD Pro. It has these giant Fox dampers. They're the 2.5s. They sort of have a remote reservoir setup. You get a locking rear differential like you do in the TRD Off-Road in the back. You get bigger springs. You get more of a lift kit. This has the most aggressive approach and departure angle. And you get all the armor associated with it and the off-road drive mode controls. These trucks are basically like Legos. Depending on what trim level and what options you have, you can mix and match. But the TRD Pro is sort of the do-everything off-road vehicle. The big thing are these tires. It's what you're really going to notice with the off-road suspension. It's definitely on the noisier and rougher side, but if you do take this off-road and that's what you value, that's what this truck is going to be good at. Reliability-wise, the one thing I will say about this truck is you've probably heard it is very reliable, but things rot out. As you can already see on this truck, which is less than a year old, you can see some corrosion building up. As that corrosion gets worse, if you live in Canada or salt belt states, suspension components start to rot out, and that's what fails on these cars. The engine and gearbox, both manual and automatic, is fairly reliable. The one thing I will say about this V6 is despite its displacement, it does not make a lot of power and it's relatively thirsty. So again, you are either buying this because you want to go off-road with it, or you're buying it because you want to use it as a tool that never breaks, and the only big cost is basic maintenance and fuel economy.
My perception is that people want this because they don't want their truck to be overcomplicated. And I think this is why it's lasted as long as it does. The core audience of this does not want a 17-inch screen, does not need every single part of the underbody covered up, doesn't need like acoustic laminated glass and fucking 7 different materials on their seats. I get that this is popular because this represents a last of its kind in engineering, like a focused, basic approach. I don't know if that makes it good, so I'll be curious to see how it drives.
I think as trucks become more modern, and as the mid-size trucks become better to drive, I'm curious to see what customers actually value at the end of the day. Mark.
I feel like my ship just came in.
Damn straight it did. You ready to hear some V6 TRD catback?
There's drivetrain shudder, there's body shake, there's jitters and judders and everything.
But it's reliable, Mark. That's all you need to know.
Why would you buy this over a Rivian R1T, Jack?
Oh, about $50,000 or $60,000 answers that question.
I thought everybody has all that money.
No, the joys of being a businessman like yourself.
Yeah, I can just afford whatever, and people just bend to my will because I make car videos.
Oh.
People don't know how important I am. So, get back down to earth here, since this is about 7,000 years old, we've covered this, but what is the TRD Pro and this version, the Tacoma, what is this car about or truck about?
It's about not driving it. It's not about dynamics or comfort or any of that stuff. It's meant to go, at least in this trim level, go off-road, for you to be able to put all your crap in the back, go tenting, go overlanding, and then never having to pay $1 in any sort of repair whatsoever. And again, as I said in the shop, because the actual dynamics of this truck, if you think about it, not very good. It doesn't ride well. Even with these high-end Fox dampers, there's so much shudder and hop in this vehicle. Despite having independent front suspension, it might as well have live rear axles front and rear. It doesn't handle well, wanders on the highway. This gearbox I'm not saying the manual is particularly inspiring in this vehicle, but in comparison, particularly as you've added all the off-road armor, bigger tires, and lift, all the gearbox does is hunt between 4th, 5th, and 6th gear. And I imagine if you use to tow this thing, it's going to be a disaster. It's just going to sit in 4th and roar away at you in the background. This is not a particularly refined drivetrain.
Okay, so the counterpoint is it feels like a truck.
Yes.
Okay, it feels like a real truck, one that hasn't been completely looked at on a whiteboard and figured out how to make everything isolated out. And I think there's some charm to this experience that's lacking, and a lot of basically everything now we get into has no feel. So I don't really want to complain the fact that this feels like it has something, and it's not horrible.
No.
I know you're saying like there's bumps, and even to my beginning point, you feel drivetrain shudder and all that. It's not really a bad thing. It's not horrible. Where what pile did we get out of where I couldn't drive it? It like literally gave me a headache.
Oh, it was the
new Sequoia thing. This is not like that. And I think it has a shitload of character. Like, it does have a ton of character. Like, you look at this, like, cool, it's a truck. It's not trying to be anything else. It's not for me. You know, to me, as a daily driver, the seats are horrible. Oh, God, like, to spend, like, an extra $5 on the foam, you know, this is not for me, but I understand why people really love this thing. And it's like a guy that we know, like Tom, right?
Yeah.
He wants something that you don't have to fuck with, right?
Ever.
Like, ever. And aside from maybe doing a really good undercoating, if you bought this thing new so it doesn't rot out, I see literally nothing wrong with it if you're a truck person.
The problem, I think, objectively, is that other trucks from other OEMs, I said this to someone online, the problem that Toyota has is that in the past, trucks were all like this. They were all sort of agricultural. They weren't refined. Modern trucks from other OEMs are now so comfortable, so refined. They return good fuel economy. The companies like Ford, Dodge, Ram, and GM spend so much time and money, and it's such a priority. Those products have gotten so good that in every other metric, other than reliability, they are superior to the Toyota trucks, and that's the problem Toyota has. How do they bring in legacy customers, people like Tom who just want something to be reliable, just good enough, and attract new customers? I don't know the answer.
Well, and Toyota does not live and breathe off its truck sales. I mean, these could disappear tomorrow, and yes, it would affect them in that market space, but it wouldn't decimate their business like it would Ford or Chevy getting rid of like
Silverado, F-150.
This isn't as much, and you can tell in terms of engineering budget and money, this is not like they're not putting money into this like they would a RAV4 or some of their higher end commodity products. So that's why it feels very basic. It's also a pro and a con of this entire experience. And again, not everybody wants, you know, like the fastest shifting transmission or the latest and greatest engine or the best sound system and all that. I get it. And that's who this appeals to. And I love it for that. I just, you know,
it's not for you, right?
Yeah, right. I would rather be in like some smooth ass Camry.
Your Huracan
or like,
STO?
Yeah, right. Yeah, my Huracan, because I make YouTube videos. I have 3 of them.
So with that, let's hit into the final thoughts, Mark.
All right, Jack.
Final thoughts on the Toyota Tacoma TRD Pro. My old rival. It's nice to revisit this thing and actually complete a video. This vehicle is like that shovel in your shed. It's not fancy, it may not be all that fun to use or operate, but you know it's going to work. And that is how I feel about the Toyota Tacoma. It'll never break, it'll outlive you, it'll probably rust away, but you know it'll turn over, start, and take you to work. You can throw all your shit in the back, and if you want to go off-roading or overlanding, the TRD Sport or this TRD Pro will take you there. The cons are, well, driving it is a real snoozer. In fact, it doesn't ride that well, doesn't get great fuel economy, but that is the price you pay for ultimate reliability. So with that, thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon.